The customers at Downtown Beans always wondered why Sarah never seemed rattled by difficult customers, why she always knew when someone was having a bad day before they said anything, and why the coffee shop somehow felt safer when she was working. What they never suspected was that their favorite barista was still conducting threat assessments on every person who walked through the door. Welcome to Faces Behind Stories. Before we dive into this incredible story of hidden protection and deadly expertise, tell me in the comments from which city are you watching this video today. And if you believe these stories of quiet guardians deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button, because sometimes your barista is doing more than just making your morning coffee. Downtown Beans occupied the corner of 5th and Main in the heart of Seattle, a cozy coffee shop with exposed brick walls, vintage furniture, and the kind of warm atmosphere that had become the unofficial community center for the entire neighborhood office. Workers started their days there with carefully crafted espresso drinks. Students studied for hours over single cups of coffee. College professors graded papers while enjoying artisanal pastries, and retirees gathered for morning conversations that often lasted until lunchtime. Sarah Chen had been working behind the espresso machine for 7 years, arriving every morning at exactly 5 a.m. to prep for the breakfast rush and establish the welcoming atmosphere that customers had come to depend on. She was 34 years old, with short black hair, kind eyes that seemed to notice everything, and a genuine smile that made even the grumpiest customers feel welcome and valued. She knew every regular customer by name, remembered their complex orders perfectly, and had developed an almost supernatural ability to sense when someone needed extra kindness or was having a particularly difficult day. To the hundreds of people who depended on her for their daily caffeine fix, Sarah was exactly what she appeared to be: a skilled barista who took pride in her craft, someone who could create beautiful latte art, discuss the origin of different coffee beans, and recommend the perfect pastry to complement any drink. But Sarah Chen was much more than she appeared, and the signs were visible to anyone who knew what to look for. Her position behind the counter wasn't random. It provided clear sight lines to both entrances, the street-facing windows and the back exit. Her movements were efficient and purposeful, giving her maximum coverage of the entire space while appearing to focus solely on coffee preparation. She knew every customer not just by their drink preferences, but by their behavior patterns, their usual arrival times, and any deviations that might indicate problems. When Sarah made drinks, she wasn't just steaming milk and pulling espresso shots. She was conducting continuous threat assessment, noting new faces, tracking suspicious behavior, and identifying potential problems before they developed. The way she positioned herself allowed her to observe everyone while appearing completely focused on her work. The coffee shop equipment had been subtly modified in ways that weren't immediately obvious to customers or casual observers. The espresso machine had hidden compartments accessible only to someone who knew exactly where to look. The cash register area had been reinforced to provide tactical cover during emergencies, and the storage room contained items that definitely weren't for making coffee, including secure communication equipment, emergency medical supplies, trauma kits, and other specialized tools that a normal barista would never need, but a federal agent might require in a crisis situation. Sarah remembered every customer because she had been trained to remember faces, voices, patterns of behavior, anything that might become important later. She knew which customers were predictable, which ones had recently changed their routines, and which strangers deserved extra attention. What the people who trusted her with their morning ritual didn't know was that they were being protected by someone who had spent 5 years with the FBI's domestic terrorism unit. Someone who had infiltrated extremist groups, tracked down bombers, and prevented attacks that would have killed hundreds of innocent people. Sarah had been Special Agent Sarah Chen, assigned to the FBI's most dangerous and sensitive cases involving homegrown terrorists, environmental extremists, religious fanatics, and militia groups who specifically targeted civilian populations. She had successfully gone undercover in remote militia compounds, posed as a sympathizer at radical political meetings, and gathered critical intelligence that led to dozens of high-profile arrests and countless prevented attacks that would have resulted in mass casualties. But that was her previous life, a carefully compartmentalized existence that she had officially left behind 3 years ago, when a complex bombing investigation in Portland had gone catastrophically wrong, leaving two fellow agents dead and Sarah with both physical injuries and psychological trauma that ended her active field career, but never diminished her unwavering commitment to protecting innocent people from those who would do them harm. The coffee shop job had seemed perfect a way to stay connected to the community while maintaining the skills and awareness that had defined her adult life. She could provide security without appearing threatening, build relationships without revealing classified information, and keep her neighborhood safe while serving excellent coffee. Sarah was preparing the morning espresso blend when she first noticed him, a man in his late 20s who entered during the pre-work rush but didn't behave like other customers. He ordered a simple black coffee, but spent more time scanning the room than drinking paid with cash. Despite having a visible credit card, and positioned himself where he could observe both the entrance and the customers. Over 15 years of law enforcement training had taught Sarah to recognize the difference between normal vigilance and operational surveillance. This man was conducting reconnaissance. She continued her normal routine, steaming milk for a cappuccino while discreetly observing the suspicious customer through the reflection in the espresso machine. His body language was wrong too, alert, too focused. He was memorizing faces, counting exits and timing patterns the way someone would if they were planning something. Sarah activated the small transmitter concealed in her name tag. "Control, this is Chen. I have a potential subject at my location, conducting possible surveillance, requesting background check on individual purchasing black coffee at 0742 hours. The response came through her nearly invisible earpiece. "Chen. This is Control. We show normal morning activity. No current alerts in your sector. Continue standard protocols." Sarah was satisfied with that response. Her instincts had been honed through years of hunting domestic terrorists, and this man triggered every warning system she had developed. He finished his coffee, quickly took a photo of what appeared to be the interior layout, and left without the normal pleasantries that characterized regular customers. 30 minutes later, a second suspicious individual appeared, a woman who ordered tea, but spent most of her time noting the locations of emergency exits, the positions of security cameras, and the flow of customer traffic. She asked casual questions about peak hours, weekend schedules, and whether the shop ever hosted special events. Sarah began conducting what appeared to be routine customer service while actually gathering intelligence. These weren't random coincidences. Someone was planning something, and they were using her coffee shop as either a target or a staging area. That afternoon brought a third visitor, a man who claimed to be from the city health department, but whose identification didn't quite match standard formats, and whose questions focused more on building security than food safety regulations. Sarah accommodated his inspection while mentally photographing his face, documenting his questions, and noting the way he paid particular attention to structural elements. By closing time, Sarah had identified a pattern of coordinated surveillance that suggested her quiet neighborhood coffee shop had been selected for something violent. She activated emergency protocols, sending coded signals to federal handlers while preparing for the possibility that her cover was about to be blown in the worst possible way. That evening, Sarah conducted her own counter-surveillance using techniques learned during her years with the FBI. She discovered that downtown Beans was being watched from multiple positions, with vehicles rotating through the area in patterns that suggested professional coordination. She reached out to her former contacts in the bureau using secure channels that bypassed normal reporting procedures. "Agent Martinez, this is Chen. I have credible surveillance activity indicating potential terrorist planning using my location as a target. Need immediate threat assessment." "Sarah, what kind of activity?" Martinez responded within minutes. "Coordinated reconnaissance, multiple subjects over 3 days focused on security protocols, customer patterns, and building vulnerabilities consistent with pre-attack planning." Martinez took her seriously. Sarah had been one of the Bureau's most reliable agents before her medical retirement. Her instincts had prevented multiple attacks and saved countless lives. If she said something was wrong, something was definitely wrong. Within hours, federal resources were quietly mobilized, surveillance teams positioned to monitor the coffee shop area. While Sarah continued her normal routine, the investigation revealed that downtown Beans sat in the center of what domestic terrorists considered a high-value target area. 3 blocks away was the federal courthouse where trials of major criminals took place. 2 blocks in the other direction was a synagogue that had received multiple threats, and directly across the street was a daycare center that served children of government employees. The coffee shop provided perfect surveillance of all 3 locations. Sarah realized she was just dealing with a potential robbery or random violence. This was sophisticated operational planning by people who understood how to maximize casualties and create maximum terror. The morning rush brought together federal employees, religious community members, and families with young children. Exactly the kind of diverse civilian target that domestic terrorists preferred, the federal investigation confirmed. Sarah's worst fears intercepted communications indicated that a cell of domestic extremists had been planning a coordinated attack designed to hit multiple targets simultaneously, using the coffee shop as both an observation post and a secondary target. Sarah found herself in a situation she had hoped never to face. Her cover was about to be tested in the most dangerous way possible, and the community she had grown to love was about to become a battlefield. The attack came on a Wednesday morning during peak hours, when downtown Beans was packed with its usual mix of office workers, parents dropping kids at daycare, and college students settling in for study sessions. Sarah was behind the espresso machine serving her regular customers when 3 men entered simultaneously through different doors. She recognized them immediately from her surveillance. The fake health inspector, the reconnaissance photographer, and a 3rd man she hadn't seen before, all moving with the coordinated purpose that marked them as a trained team. Sarah had maybe 30 seconds before they revealed their intentions, and the peaceful coffee shop became a crime scene. She activated her emergency beacon while continuing to steam milk for a latte, appearing completely focused on customer service, while internally shifting into the tactical mindset that had once made her one of the FBI's most effective agents. "Ladies and gentlemen," the lead terrorist announced, pulling an automatic weapon from under his jacket. "This establishment is now under our control. Everyone will remain seated and follow instructions exactly." Panic erupted among the customers, screaming, crying, people diving under tables, children clutching their parents, business travelers trying to hide behind furniture. The organized chaos that Sarah had witnessed during previous terrorist incidents. But Sarah didn't panic. She had trained for exactly this scenario, and she was already moving. The terrorists had made their first critical error. They had assumed all civilians were helpless. They hadn't considered that their carefully chosen coffee shop might be protected by someone who understood their tactics and knew how to stop them. Sarah reached under the espresso machine, not for cleaning supplies, but for items she had hoped never to use: a tactical radio emergency medical kit and a service weapon that she was still qualified to carry as a federal agent on medical leave. "Control, this is Agent Chen. I have an active terrorist situation at my location. 3 armed subjects have taken approximately 15 civilians hostage, requesting immediate tactical response. Chen, maintain position and provide intelligence. Do not engage. Repeat, do not engage." Sarah understood the order, but she also understood something her handlers didn't. These terrorists weren't planning to negotiate. They were planning to kill everyone in the coffee shop and then move on to their other targets: the federal courthouse, the synagogue, and the daycare center. She had spent 5 years studying domestic terrorist tactics, and she knew this was the beginning of a coordinated attack designed to maximize casualties, spread terror, and create the kind of chaos that would dominate news cycles for months. Sarah made a decision that would save lives or end her career. She was going to engage. Sarah moved through the coffee shop like the trained federal agent she had always been, using the chaos and confusion to her advantage. While the terrorists focused on controlling terrified civilians, she positioned herself for maximum tactical effectiveness. The first terrorist was threatening customers near the window, trying to use them as human shields while maintaining visual contact with his partners. Sarah approached from his blind spot, using coffee shop equipment as cover. She struck with precision, developed through years of close quarters combat training, disarming him and rendering him unconscious. Before he could alert the others, his weapon was secured, his radio was confiscated, and 1/3 of the threat was eliminated without any customers being harmed. The second terrorist realized something was wrong. When his partner stopped responding to radio calls, He began moving through the coffee shop searching for threats while using customers as shields. Sarah had anticipated this response. She used the coffee shop's layout to her advantage, creating distractions that drew the terrorist away from civilians, then engaging him in an area where no innocent people could be hurt. The takedown was swift, professional, and left the second attacker neutralized. The third terrorist, the leader, realized his operation was compromised and made the decision that Sarah had been expecting. He activated what appeared to be a dead man's switch, threatening to detonate explosives that would kill everyone in the building. This was the moment Sarah had trained for throughout her FBI career, the point where negotiation ended and tactical action became the only option to save innocent lives. She moved with speed that surprised even herself, closing distance before the terrorist could react, striking pressure points that disabled his trigger hand and securing the device before it could be activated. The entire engagement lasted less than 4 minutes. 3 terrorists neutralized, 15 hostages safe, and a coordinated attack prevented before it could begin. The FBI tactical team that arrived found a situation unlike anything they had expected. 3 suspects secured and waiting, 15 civilians safe and unharmed, and a coffee shop barista who had just prevented what could have been one of the deadliest domestic terrorist attacks in Seattle history. Agent Martinez, who led the response, found herself debriefing a former colleague who had single-handedly stopped a coordinated attack while serving lattes. "Sarah, why didn't you wait for backup?" Martinez asked while surveying the scene. "Because they weren't planning to negotiate," Sarah replied. "They were planning to kill everyone here, then move to the courthouse, the synagogue, and the daycare." I recognized the tactical pattern. This was the opening move in a larger operation. The investigation that followed confirmed Sarah's assessment. The 3 terrorists were part of a larger cell that had been planning simultaneous attacks on multiple targets. The coffee shop operation was designed to create chaos and draw emergency responders away from the other locations. Sarah had prevented not just a coffee shop massacre, but a coordinated attack that could have killed hundreds of people and terrorized the entire city. The customers who had depended on her for their morning coffee were learning that their favorite barista had been a federal agent, that the woman who remembered their names and made perfect latte art had been protecting them from threats they never knew existed. Mrs. Patterson, who brought her grandchildren for hot chocolate every Saturday, said it best: "She was always Sarah to us. It doesn't matter what her real job was. She took care of all of us." 6 months later, Sarah still works at Downtown Beans, still arrives at 5 a.m., still makes perfect coffee and remembers every customer's order. But now there's a small plaque behind the counter, placed there by grateful community members, in appreciation of Sarah Chen, whose vigilance and courage saved lives and reminded us that heroes serve coffee too. Sarah tried to have it removed, but the community refused. They deserved to know that their neighborhood was protected by someone who had dedicated her life to stopping the worst kinds of human evil. The tactical equipment stays behind the espresso machine, because Sarah understands that retirement from active duty doesn't mean retirement from the responsibility to protect innocent people. Sometimes the most important battles happen in coffee shops. Sometimes your barista is conducting threat assessments while steaming your milk. Sometimes a warrior trades her badge for an apron, but never stops standing guard. Sarah Chen found her perfect post-bureau assignment protector of a community space where people gather to start their days with something warm and comforting, exactly the kind of normal, peaceful life that terrorists want to destroy. Have you ever met someone who seemed ordinary until extraordinary circumstances revealed their true nature? Share their story in the comments, because heroes are everywhere, usually making your coffee instead of making headlines. Subscribe to Faces Behind Stories for more tales of hidden protectors, quiet guardians, and everyday heroes who keep us safe while we live our normal lives, never knowing how much courage stands between us and those who would do us harm. Because sometimes the most important victories happen over morning coffee. And sometimes the best protection comes from someone who knows exactly how evil thinks